Shana Tova to everybody. Most rabbis around the world will be today speaking on Israel. I chose not to do that. That I'll speak on Israel tomorrow. Today, I'm going to speak on a subject which is much more of an existential threat to the Jewish people than what's going on in Israel with Hamas, with Hezbollah, with Iran. It's a much bigger problem. For the sake of transparency, I was not going to deliver this sermon. I was not going to do this sermon. And then my daughter Gabby, she said, Dad, she said, you've got to speak to the young people in the synagogue. So I said, okay, what do you want me to say? She gave me some ideas. And then I said, okay, we're going to do this together. And that's what we did. I sent my ideas, I gave them the format, the framework, and I get an email back, nah, Dad, this has got to go, this has got to go, that's got to go. You're talking to young people. And over the last few weeks, we sort of polished it up a little bit to where we think it's presentable. So, why am I telling you this? Because if at the end of the sermon, you like it and you're happy with it, that's my work. And if you're not, well, you can speak to Gabby afterwards. So, in a modest synagogue that was struggling, the rabbi decided that the next generation needed to take more initiative. So he had an idea. He bought a very large tablet, not an electronic one, not a stone one, but a large piece of, I guess, Bristol board, whatever you want to call it. And he announced from the bima, he said, from tonight, this tablet's going to hang in the foyer of the synagogue. And I want each child, each teenager, each young adult who comes to services to write one thing that they think Judaism ought to teach or to hold dear in the future. And every week, I'll read a few, and together we'll choose which ones become part of our community's guiding values. The first Friday night, quite a few young people scribbled things. Some were serious, kindness, justice, learning. Some were funny, free foosball in the shul, lots of pizza, less yelling, turning out the lights, turn down the air conditioning. The older members of the congregation chuckled at this idea. But weeks passed, and something amazing happened. One teen wrote, we need a space to talk about doubts without judgment, which sparked meaningful conversations in the teen class. Another asked for Jewish music that feels like me, not just the tunes of old, and so that the young people can start leading a modern style song once a month. Someone said, I want to teach others how to cook Jewish food. I want to run a workshop. And before long, more youth were engaged in leading parts of the minhagim of the holidays, Shabbat, reaching out to newcomers, different types of services, music services, study services, or just standing around outside over coffee, schmoozing on Shabbat. It's a different type of service. And at the end of the school year, the rabbi got up and he said, you see all these values that you've written, the funny ones, the serious ones, you've helped shape the future of the synagogue. If this community is to survive in its meaning, then it depends on you, all the young people in our community. Your words, your ideas, even your jokes. Because Judaism lives in our hands together. Now, I like that story very much, but it begs me to ask the following question. Will our grandchildren sit in synagogue, praying and singing, celebrating the holidays? Or will they look back at Judaism as a story of the past, something their ancestors once practiced, but then faded away with time? Now, no disrespect to anybody here today, but if you are under the age of 35 and you are still here with us today, the chances are pretty good that it's because your parents or grandparents forced you to come, okay? And don't put your hands up, whatever you do. And you're here to make them happy. 2 weeks ago, I was speaking to one of my students, and I said to him, "Where are you going for Rosh Hashanah?" He said, "Oh, we're going to another synagogue. I won't tell you which one. It wasn't even a conservative synagogue, it was an Orthodox synagogue." He said, "We're going there." I said, "Well, what connection do you have with that synagogue?" "Oh," he said, "my grandfather gets us the tickets every year and we go and sit with him." He said, "My father doesn't do anything, so it's my grandfather." I said, "And how old is your grandfather?" He said, "He's 97. Okay, very nice. You're fair. You've got to go and be with him. But what are you going to do once he passes away? Where are you going to go then? Who's going to get you the tickets?" Went quiet. He said, I don't know. I never really thought about it. Probably won't do too much once he passes away." I said, "Why not? It's your responsibility. You're getting married. You're going to have children. Are you going to complain in 20 years' time when your children grow up and they don't know what it is to be Jewish? What's going to happen when that generation are gone? Will your generation step up and keep the traditions of the community alive? Or will Judaism, as we practice it, simply fade away? You know, Jews in Canada are increasingly secular. In 2011, the percentage of people who describe themselves as being of Jewish ethnicity, culture, or ancestry, who said they had no religion, was 13%. By 2021, that figure had grown to 19%. People of Jewish background are increasingly no longer practicing the Jewish religion. And without religion, without practice, without community, what is it that's going to hold us together here in Canada, outside of Israel, in a country where assimilation is so easy? If you want to have Jewish grandchildren having no religion, well, that might work in Israel, but it won't work here in Canada. We don't live in such a small, walled-off community that Jewishness will be reliably transmitted without religion. The future of Judaism in Canada depends on the choices that the people in this room, the young people in this room, make. But it's not just the young people. Everyone has a role to play and decisions to make. Jews are no longer forced to live in ghettos. We don't wear yellow stars on our clothes. Contrary to what the racists of a few generations ago thought, Jews are not a visible minority. There is no Jewish look. A Polish Jew looks more like a Gentile Jew, a Gentile Pole, than an Iranian Jew. If we want to assimilate and disappear into the mainstream, into the main culture, it's very easy. That makes all of us Jews by choice. Being Jewish today is more than something you're simply born into. It's something you have to actively choose. Today, Rosh Hashanah, is a very appropriate time to talk about making choices, because according to our tradition, it is the anniversary of the ability to choose. When we say Rosh Hashanah celebrates the birthday of the world. Many people assume that means the first day of creation was on Rosh Hashanah. But that's not even close. The rabbis tell us that the first day of creation came on the 25th day of Elul. Therefore, Rosh Hashanah falls on the 6th day of creation, the day on which mankind was created. So why mark the 6th day of creation? What makes it so special? If you're not going to use the first day of creation, why not Shabbat, the 7th day, when creation was completed? That would make more sense. Rabbi Nachman of Breslov taught that it's because until people were created, there was no free will. Plants and animals simply respond to the environment that they were created in. They've been programmed by God. So in a sense, prior to the creation of people, everything was simply part of God's doing, God's will. Reb Nachman calls man Ba'al HaBechira, the master of choice. The creation of people represents the first time something can behave contrary to the will of God came into this world. And in today's world, we have more choices than ever before. More things competing for our attention than ever before. We are surrounded by noise, entertainment, obligations, distractions, each one pulling us away from what truly matters. We live in an attention-based economy. Everyone wants to be entertained. Social media screams for attention. And we're mostly happy to provide it. We're so addicted to the immediate gratification that's provided by our devices that I'm sure, I'm not looking at anybody in particular, but I'm sure some people sitting here right now are feeling a little antsy that they can't be looking at their phones and devices and checking their messages. With so many other fun things we could be doing, why choose to be Jewish? Why choose to not only be Jewish, but to be engaged in Jewish stuff? It's you, all the young people. You are the ones who hold the keys to the future. Judaism cannot survive on the momentum of your parents and your grandparents alone. It needs you, each and every one of you. You are the ones that must make Shabbat dinner, who must step up to volunteer, to show up to synagogue, not only on high holidays, to learn to question, to make Judaism yours. Don't wait for someone else to hand it to you. This is your inheritance, but it's also your responsibility. Being Jewish is a gift. You don't have to practice it exactly as your grandparents did. But you do have to practice it. If you want a Jewish future, you've got to create it. You know, when I meet students preparing for the conversion program, I explain that the goal of the studies is not for the students to live the Judaism that I live, or to live the Judaism that they see out and about. Absolutely not. I don't live the same Judaism that my parents and grandparents lived. Rather, my role as rabbi is to share the details of Jewish life, the laws, the customs, the traditions, the theology, the history, so that students can then take that and shape a Jewish life that is meaningful for them and that speaks to them in their homes. Not one going back 1,000 years ago. In this way, Judaism continues to grow, to adapt, to remain deeply relevant from generation to generation. And you are no different. For people my age and older, those of us who grew up in the 50s and 60s, our parents would inevitably invoke Emil Fackenheim's 614th commandment. Anybody remember who that was? Anybody know what that was, the 614th commandment? I'll remind you. Don't give Hitler a posthumous victory by giving up being Jewish. I'm not sure how well that worked then, only 10 to 20 years after the Holocaust. But now, 80 years after the horrible time, it is a strong motivator. The Jewish people as a whole have recovered from the trauma. And in the intervening years, Israel has become successful. Prosperous country, home to half of the world's Jews. Survival of the Jewish people as a whole seems to be relatively assured. There are two sides to why be Jewishly engaged. What Judaism can do for you and what you can do for Judaism. Now, if you're not doing it, if you're not saying it, I know you're thinking it. But Rabbi, services are too long. They're too boring. I don't understand Hebrew. I don't see what it does for me. There are lots of different reasons for going to synagogue. There's a story about a guy who was a devout atheist, but he was also a regular shul goer. And one day his daughter said to him, "Dad, I don't get it. You are an avowed atheist. Why do you go to shul every Saturday morning as regular as clockwork? You don't even believe in God." And he answered, "Darling, you don't understand. My friend Max, he goes to shul to talk to God. I go to shul to talk to Max." And that's one of the most important things Judaism can offer, community. You can travel anywhere in the world, and you have an instant community. You're part of a global fellowship. Judaism started out as a family, Abraham's family, and it grew to a tribe with Jacob, and then a collection of tribes with Jacob's sons, and eventually to a religion. But our familial, tribal roots are baked into our DNA. We still believe the Jewish people are one big family, Klal Yisrael. And the idea that all Jews are responsible for each other, Kol Yisrael Arevim Zeh Bazeh, remains an important principle. And community does not have to be centered around synagogue. The single most important Jewish custom is probably the Friday night dinner. A study from last year found that 1 in 4 Canadians has a meal with their family every day. Only 1 in 4. Some families never eat together. Everyone is busy with their own activities. They come home at different times, they're tired, and they prefer sometimes to eat dinner sitting in front of the TV. In Israel, even secular Jews generally have a Friday night dinner with some shape or form with family and friends. It's part of the culture. It's not about religion, it's culture. Some will even do dinner complete with making kiddush and singing Shabbat songs, and afterwards they go out to the bar or to the clubs. That's their way of doing Shabbat. Young people host each other for Shabbat meals in their apartments. They don't make it potluck. Some do, but they go out of their way. People go out and they buy things and they bring. They set aside time every week for the things that we say are important in life, family and friends. My friends, Judaism can also provide a meaning in your life. There are many vehicles to find meaning: prayer, study, volunteer work. It can help provide a sense of purpose, to be part of something bigger than yourself, having meaning in life. It's also a secret to happiness. Contrary to popular opinion, having more money does not lead to more happiness. You know, I've got to tell you, in the 45 years I've been a rabbi, I've attended the bedsides of the dying many a times. And dying people have confided in me. None of them has ever said to me, Rabbi, I wish I had another $50,000. None of them. But what they did say, often, I didn't spend enough time with the family. I didn't spend enough time with the children. I should have spent more time, and now it's over. It can provide a sense of purpose, Judaism, to be part of something bigger than yourself. A UK study found that people who reported greater meaning in life were not only happier, but also had stronger relationships, richer social engagements, better physical and mental health, lower risk of divorce and chronic illness, and were more likely to adopt a positive lifestyle of habits. In addition to what Judaism can do for you, the question is what you can do for Judaism. It's not only about keeping the tradition going. It's not only about what previous generations are handing you. It's about what you will hand forward. How will your generation make Judaism new, fresh, and engaging? Conservative Judaism, more than other denominations, grapples with the questions of how to balance tradition with living the modern world. 70 years ago, the big question was the cultural change that led to many Jews driving to synagogue on Shabbat. 40 years ago, the big question was ordaining women. 25 years ago was about how do we recognize same-sex couples. Today, the questions go on. Things like music, musical instruments on Shabbat, how we deal with intermarriage. Every generation has its own issues, its own questions, its own challenges. It's not only for rabbis who are engaged in figuring out these questions. It's everyone who is part of the community. To the older generation that's sitting here today, don't think your work is finished, because it isn't. You are the memory keepers, the bridge to everything that came before. But part of that role means being honest. And some of you, I know, feel that you didn't do enough to carry Judaism forward, that you didn't teach your children as much as you could have, or that you had other priorities that you preferred to live rather than your Judaism. Admitting that is not a failure. Admitting that is actually wisdom, because now you can urge your children and your grandchildren to do more than you did, to go further than you went. Your task now is not only to hand down traditions, but to inspire, to empower, and to make space for the next generation to reshape Judaism in their own voice. And if you want them to carry this forward, show them not only the beauty of what Judaism has been, but the relevance of Judaism and what it still can be. Support their experiments, their questions, even their mistakes. That's how Judaism has always survived. By adapting, by holding on to its soul. I know a lot of people see Judaism as a museum, figuratively speaking, where you just drop in and you look at the displays of what your ancestors did when you become a little nostalgic. And then once you've had your little fill of nostalgia, you move on. In the Shema, which we recited earlier today, we said, "V'hayu advarim ha'eler asher anochi mitzavcha hayom levavecha." And these words that I command you today shall be on your heart. Rashi says that today is there to teach us that we should look at these words as something new and exciting, not as old news that we should ignore, It's up to all of us to figure how to keep Judaism new and exciting. My friends, October the 7th was a wake-up call for Jews all over the world. The level of hate, level of violence perpetrated by Hamas, Yimach Shimam v'Zichram was shocking. And the sympathy giving way to criticism, giving way to anti-Semitism was disheartening. But you know what? October the 7th also reminded us of something else. If others are determined to try to eliminate us, they will not succeed. The only real danger is if we eliminate ourselves. And we do so by letting Judaism fade away, by forgetting who we are, by choosing apathy over commitment. We cannot allow our enemies to win by disappearing on our own. One response has already begun. Renewed engagement within Judaism. Some of the hostages who were released reported that even though they had been completely secular before they were taken hostage, they began to pray, to take on Jewish practice while in captivity. And many Jews have concluded that if they are going to be hated for being Jewish, then they should know what it means to be Jewish. And across the world, rabbis, myself included, have reported an uptick in interest in Jewish learning and in Jewish conversion. There's an old saying that a little anti-Semitism is very good for Jewish continuity. When the world seems against us, we come together, we join forces. When our extended family is attacked, we realize we are still part of that family. So the question I leave you today on this Rosh Hashanah is this: what choice will you make? Will you let Judaism be something that fades into the background, a story told about our ancestors? Or will you make it the story that you live, the story your children and grandchildren will inherit? Judaism has survived exile, persecution, and dispersion, not because it was easy, but because every generation chose to carry it forward in new ways. Our parents and grandparents made their choice. Now it's for all of you young people to make your choice. Rosh Hashanah is the anniversary of free will, of the day humans first had the power to decide. Today we still have that power. We choose distraction, we choose assimilation, we choose apathy, and we can choose meaning, purpose, family, and community. The choice is yours. As we enter this new year, let us choose life. Let us choose Judaism. Let us choose each other. Let us make choices that will ensure that 100 years from now, our descendants will still be gathering to sound the shofar, to eat apples and honey, and to proclaim together. If you remember nothing else in the sermon, in these words that I've said to you today, please try to remember the words of the late Lord Rabbi Jonathan Sachs, who wrote, "We are part of a story that began long before we were born and will continue long after we are no longer here. The question for all of us is, will you, the next generation, continue the story?" Shana Tova.